The white icons appeared on the tactical display, 87 of them. They were not there a moment ago. The display's refresh counter read 1403. The last full-spectrum sweep, logged at 1402, had shown nothing but the brown dwarf's dim flare and the cold debris of a system the galaxy had long ago stopped caring about. The chamber smelled of ozone and old incense, the same smell it had carried for 6,000 years. High Warlord Kor Vithan leaned forward, his ceremonial scar pulling tight across his left eye. "Identify them," he said, his voice flat, unhurried. The tactical officer worked his console. 3 seconds of silence. Then, warship-class reactors, High Admiral, powering up. They are dreadnoughts. Kor Vithan did not blink. He had commanded 1,870 ships for 237 years. He had conquered 14 species, boarded 9 flagships, and never once lost a fleet engagement. The word dreadnought meant something to him. It meant slow, loud, and outmatched by his battle groups. He had seen human vessels before. Small, boxy, undergunned. They did not have dreadnoughts. How many? 87, High Admiral. They are materializing from the gravity shadow of Hephaestus 9. The holographic map shifted, zooming to the brown dwarf. The white icons grew from tiny dots to full ship silhouettes, each one 2 kilometers long, angular, built for nothing but punishment. They emerged from the dark like teeth. Kor Vithan's jaw tightened. Something he had not felt in 200 years crept into his chest. It was not fear, it was uncertainty. "Open a channel to their fleet command," he said. The transmission went out. On the main viewer, a woman's face appeared, gray-haired, weather-beaten, holding a chipped ceramic cup. She did not speak. She simply looked at him, her eyes calm, her hand steady. Behind her, a tactical display showed the same 87 icons, but arranged in a formation he did not recognize. "This is High Warlord Kor Vithan of the Korith Dominion. You are committing an act of war. Stand down." The transmission cut off. The screen went dark. Then, a single line of text appeared on his own display, typed in Dominion Standard. 4 words. "Admiral Wren sends her regards." Kor Vithan stared at the words. The chamber was silent. The scaled faces of his officers had gone pale. He opened his mouth to speak, but no order came. He had never been without an order. The tactical display updated. All 87 dreadnoughts were now in attack formation. The mines, he had not even noticed the mines until now, were arming across the entire corridor. 12,000 support vessels were emerging from the same gravity shadow, their signatures flooding the sensor net. And the human fleet's weapons systems were calibrating to something precise, something that, if he had been paying attention for the last 300 years, he might have recognized as the exact frequency of his own fleet's shield harmonics.
He had time to think one thing before the silence broke. They knew. They always knew. I wish I could tell you what happened next, but that moment, the moment before the firing order, that is where this story really lives.
Because the truth is, they had been waiting for this long before the first white icon appeared. 72 hours earlier in the same chamber, the Korith Dominion had voted. The War Council chamber was full. 200 officers, admirals, and clan lords sat in tiered rows, their scaled hands resting on data pads. The holographic map showed the galaxy, in gold, 203 systems under Dominion control, each one marked with a victory emblem. In the highest row, Elder Maveri sat alone, her ancient eyes half closed, her breathing slow and measured. She was 891 years old. She had seen 12 high warlords rise and fall. She knew the weight of certainty, and she knew what it cost. The vote was called. The question, should the Dominion annex the outer colonies of the human species, a modest cluster of 12 systems on the galactic edge? The results appeared, 189 in favor, 14 against. High Warlord Kor Vithan rose from his throne, his ceremonial plate gleaming under the hall's dim light. He did not acknowledge the dissenting 14, he had never needed to. He simply turned to the communications officer and said, "Inform the humans they have 72 hours to evacuate 2.3 million colonists. If they resist, our 1,870 warships will enforce the order." The officer nodded. The message was sent. Somewhere in the highest row, Elder Maveri opened her eyes. She watched Kor Vithan leave the chamber, his boots echoing on volcanic stone. She watched the officers file out, their chatter already turning to logistics and prize allocations. She remained seated, her hands folded, her gaze fixed on the holographic map. 2.3 million. She had heard that number before. She had heard it when the Dominion had annexed the Vasari, the Zyle, the Korvath. Each time the number had been a prelude to silence, the silence of a species that had been erased from the galaxy's memory. But the humans were different. She had watched them for 30 years, ever since they had first entered the galactic community. She had seen their diplomats, their traders, their engineers. They were quiet. They did not boast. They did not threaten. They simply waited. She had not shared her observations with the Council.
She had learned, over 8 centuries, that certainty was a fortress that could not be breached by reason. So she sat, and she waited, and she wondered if the humans had been doing the same.
300 light-years away, on the Onyx Bridge of Meridian Station, Admiral Sora Ren was drinking tea from a chipped cup when the transmission arrived. The cup was white ceramic, cracked near the rim, and it bore a faded gold logo. The Silent Century 2015-25-155A, a museum exhibition she had visited as a child, back when Earth was still learning to walk among the stars. She had carried the cup through 4 commands, 3 decades, and more quiet nights than she could count. The tea was cold. It was always cold. She drank it anyway. The transmission was short. 72 hours. 2.3 million colonists. Evacuate or resist. The Dominion's ultimatum arrived in plain text, with no preamble, no threat, no negotiation, just a deadline. Ren set the cup down. Her gray hair was pulled back, her face lined with the dry air of recycled life support. She had been on the bridge for 18 hours, and she had been waiting for this message for 4 years, ever since Lieutenant Jaya Park had first walked into her office with a pattern analysis that made no sense. "Lieutenant," she said, her voice soft but clear. "Wake the fleet." Park looked up from her station. She was 31, sharp-eyed, and she had been drinking the same cold coffee for 6 hours. She did not ask for confirmation. She simply turned to her console and typed a single command. "Project Stillwater, stand by at 2 active." The command was routed through a series of relay buoys, old, unpowered, invisible to Dominion sensors. It traveled across the Kale corridor, past the gravity shadow of Hephaestus 9, and into the heart of a brown dwarf that the galaxy had classified as astrographically worthless. There, in the dark, the automated shipyards began to wake. On the Onyx Bridge, Commander Marcus Webb, his prosthetic arm resting on the railing, watched the status indicators blink. He was 44, an old soldier, and he had been part of the Stillwater Protocol for 11 years. He knew what the command meant. He also knew what it did not mean. It did not mean victory. It meant a choice. "Admiral," he said, "the first wave will take 87 minutes to achieve combat readiness. Captain Vasquez is on the line from the Sword of Soul." Ren picked up her cup. She took a sip of the cold tea, then set it down again. "Put her through." The screen flickered to life. Captain Elena Vasquez was a stern woman of 49, her face harsh from years in the gravity shadow. Behind her, the dim red lighting of a Dreadnoughts Materialized glowed. "Admiral," she said, "all 87 ships are at 94% readiness. We've been running silent drills for 300 years. The crews are ready, the systems are ready. But I need to know, are we doing this?" Ren looked at the cup. The faded logo caught the light. The Silent Century. A century of waiting. 3 centuries. In fact, because the museum exhibition had been wrong, the Silent Century had never ended. It had just changed its name to Project Stillwater. "Alina," Ren said, "the Dominion gave us 72 hours. They gave us 2.3 million people. They didn't ask. They didn't negotiate. They assumed we would break. So we show them we didn't break," Vasquez asked. "No," Ren said. "We show them we were never broken. We were just waiting." She turned to Lieutenant Park. "Status on the intelligence package?" Park pulled up a secondary display. "Ready, Admiral. We've analyzed 1,200 Vorkai engagements, every formation pattern, every tactical response time, every known weakness. The Dominion's fleet doctrine is predictable to within 7 seconds. Our countermeasures are calibrated to their exact composition. And the mines? Armed and positioned. The corridor is a funnel. They'll have to come through it." Ren nodded. She picked up the cup again, but this time she did not drink. She simply held it, her thumb tracing the crack near the rim. 300 years of patience, worn into ceramic like a scar that had stopped hurting. "Commander Webb," she said, "send a message to the fleet. 1 line, we are not outnumbered. "We are outpatient." Webb typed the message and sent it. Across the Kale corridor, the Dreadnoughts began their final pre-launch sequences. The brown dwarf's gravity shadow flickered as massive reactors powered up, their emissions suppressed by technology that had been designed in secret, built in silence, and tested only in simulation. Lieutenant Park looked at the clock. 57 minutes until the first ships could move. She looked at Admiral Wren, who was still holding the cup, her face unreadable. Admiral, Park said, "What happens after they see us?" Wren did not look away from the display. "That depends on what they see," she said. "They see ships, they'll fight. They see the math, they'll run. They see 300 years of waiting, and they'll understand that we have been patient long enough to be dangerous." She set the cup down and turned to the main display. The map of the Kale corridor was quiet, empty, dark, unremarkable. But beneath the surface, beneath the gravity shadow, 87 dreadnoughts were breathing their first real breaths in 3 centuries. "Wake them," she said, and somewhere in the dark, the first reactor reached full power. On the other side of the galaxy, Elder Mavari watched the Dominion sensor nets from her private quarters. She had been watching for hours, her ancient eyes scanning the data streams that flowed from the Kale corridor. She saw nothing, no ships, no movement, no anomaly, but she noticed something else. The Dominion's patrols had been redirected, their formation slightly looser than standard. It was a small change, barely perceptible. But it was the kind of change that happened when an empire grew comfortable. She closed her eyes. She had seen that comfort before. It always preceded the fall. She did not know what the humans had built. She did not know how many ships they had hidden, or where or when they would emerge. But she knew the shape of patience. She had worn it herself for centuries, watching her own people lose their way. She opened her eyes and looked at the clock. 72 hours had not yet passed. There was still time. She sent a single message to no one in particular, a note in her personal log, encrypted, unreadable by Dominion security. "They are not afraid. They are not angry. They are simply waiting. And when they are done waiting, the galaxy will have to learn a new word." The log entry sat encrypted, unseen. Elder Mavari closed her interface and stared at the dark screen. She had done what she could. The rest belonged to the humans. On the Onyx Bridge, the clock read 14:47, 53 minutes since the activation order. The first dreadnoughts were at 94% combat readiness. Captain Vasquez reported all systems nominal, weapons hot, shields stable. The gravity shadow of Hephaestus 9 had begun to distort, a ripple that would take 17 minutes to propagate to Dominion patrols. Wren watched the sensor display, her hand resting on the chipped cup. "We have a contact," Lieutenant Park said. "Dominion reconnaissance drone, Vector 047. It will pass within 2 light seconds of the shadow's edge in 8 minutes. Wren did not look up. "Can we spoof it?" "Not without revealing our position. The drone is passive. It's just listening. If we jam, they'll know something is there. Then let it hear nothing. Maintain emission control across all vessels." The drone passes were still dark. Park nodded. The crew worked in silence. Commander Webb moved to the tactical display, his prosthetic arm clicking against the railing. He had seen this play out in simulations 100 times. The drone always passed. The Dominion always assumed it was a glitch, but this was not a simulation. The 8 minutes stretched. The drone's icon crept across the display, a small red diamond, indifferent. At 5 minutes out, Webb noticed his own hand trembling. He closed it into a fist and held it against his thigh. No one saw. At the 2-minute mark, the drone's path took it within the shadow's outer field. For a fraction of a second, its passive sensors registered an anomaly, a gravitational distortion that did not match the brown dwarf's known mass. The drone's logs recorded the reading, flagged it as a possible data error, and continued on its course. The reading was sent back to the Dominion fleet via the next relay. It would arrive in 3 hours. "Drone is clear," Park said. No active response. Wren exhaled. She did not realize she had been holding her breath. She picked up the cup and drank the cold tea. It tasted of nothing. "The fleet has achieved full combat readiness," Vasquez reported from the Sword of Soul. "We can move on your order." "Not yet," Wren said. "We wait for the Dominion to commit. They have to cross the corridor. We don't show our hand until they're inside the funnel." She turned to the main display. The map showed the Kale corridor, a narrow stretch of space between 2 gas giants. the only viable approach to the human colonies. The Dominion's fleet, 1,870 warships, was still assembling on the far side of the system. Their formation was loose, confident. They were not expecting resistance. They had never needed to. They're staging at the junction, Webb said. They'll move through the corridor in 3 waves. Battleships first, cruisers in the middle, support at the rear. Standard doctrine. Standard, Wren repeated. They've been doing the same thing for 6,000 years. She looked at Lieutenant Park. How long until they reach the minefield? At their current speed. 6 hours, 23 minutes. Wren nodded. Then we have 6 hours to get the civilian evacuation done. Commander Webb, what's the status of New Jakarta? Webb pulled up a secondary display. The evacuation flotilla is at the rally point. They've loaded 1.2 million so far. The remaining 1.1 million are still on the surface. At current rates, they need another 9 hours. Then we buy them 9 hours, Wren said. The Dominion will slow down when they start taking losses. She turned back to the cup. The logo caught the dim light. The silent century. She thought about the museum, about walking through the exhibit as a child, staring at the photographs of the first interstellar ships, small, fragile, crewed by people who had no idea what they were walking into. 300 years later, their descendants were about to show the galaxy what silence had built. 6 hours later, the Dominion's first wave entered the corridor. Corvethan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Glory of Korath, watching the tactical display. The fleet moved in perfect formation, 600 battleships, their shields overlapping, their weapons arrays cold. He had ordered no preliminary bombardment. He wanted the humans to see him coming. He wanted them to feel the weight of certainty. High Admiral, the lead elements are approaching the gravity shadow. Sensors show no active emissions from the brown dwarf. Their fleet is still hiding, Vethan said. They have a dozen ships at most. They will surrender when they see our numbers. The officer hesitated. High Admiral, there is an anomaly in the gravitational data. The drone that passed earlier reported a distortion. It was dismissed as a sensor error. Then dismiss it again, Vithan said. Focus on the corridor. The fleet advanced. The first battleships reached the midpoint of the corridor. The mines did not activate immediately. They were programmed to wait until the main body had committed. The Dominion scanners swept the area, found nothing, and moved on. Then the first mine detonated. It was a small explosion, barely enough to damage a destroyer's shields, but it was the signal. In the space of 2 seconds, 1,200 mines armed and detonated in a coordinated pattern that had been designed to mirror the Dominion's own preferred formation. The mines were not aimed at ships. They were aimed at gaps. They created a field of debris and energy that disrupted shields, confused sensors, and forced the fleet to scatter. Corvethan's jaw tightened. What was that? Mines, High Admiral. They are everywhere. The corridor is saturated. Order the fleet to hold formation. We will clear a path with our forward screens. The order went out. The battleships adjusted their positions, moving to create a defensive perimeter. But the mines had already done their work. The formation was broken, and in the chaos, the human ships had begun to move. They are emerging from the shadow. The tactical officer said, multiple contacts. Warship class. They are not a dozen. High Admiral, I'm reading more than 50. Vethan leaned forward. The white icons multiplied on the display. 50, 60, 70, 80, 87. The same number that had appeared in his initial report, but now they were not just icons, they were ships, fully armed, fully powered, moving into attack formation with a precision that spoke of decades of drill. The human dreadnoughts were not slow, they were not loud. They were silent, angular, and they were already executing a maneuver that placed them directly between the Dominion fleet and the evacuation flotilla. Open a channel, Vethan commanded. The transmission went out. This time, Admiral Wren's face appeared again, calm, gray-haired, holding the same chipped cup. High Warlord, she said, her voice level, your ultimatum was received. Our answer is the formation behind me. You have 1,870 ships. We have 87 dreadnoughts, 1,200 mines, and 12,000 support vessels. But numbers are not what you think they are. She paused. You have been fighting the same wars for 6,000 years. You have never faced a species that spent 3 centuries learning every move you make. We know your formation patterns. We know your response times. We know your shield harmonics. And we have calibrated every weapon in this fleet to hit exactly where you are weakest. Vethan stared. He opened his mouth to respond, but she was not finished. You have 3 minutes to withdraw beyond the corridor's outer marker. If you do not, we will fire. Not to disable, to destroy. This is not a negotiation, it is a statement. We were never defenseless, we were patient. The transmission cut off, the bridge was silent. Vithen's officers looked at him, their scaled faces pale. He had never been spoken to like that. He had never been given a deadline. He had never been told to leave. He did not give the order to retreat. He gave the order to attack. All ships, advance. Target their lead dreadnoughts! We will break their line and they will scatter. The fleet surged forward. The human ships held position. The mines detonated again, this time targeting the cruisers, shredding the flanks of the Dominion formation. The first volleys from both sides began to exchange plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, railgun slugs. But the human fire was precise, surgical. They targeted bridge sections, engine pods, shield generators. They did not waste a single shot. On the Onyx Bridge, Ren watched the display. The red and white icons clashed. The Dominion was losing, not because they were weaker, but because they were predictable. Every maneuver they attempted, the humans had already practiced against. Admiral, we have a request from the Dominion, Park said. They want to negotiate terms of surrender. Ren shook her head. Not yet. They are still confident. They need to lose more before they believe. She turned to the cup. The tea was cold. She drank it anyway. The taste was familiar. In the high chamber of the Obsidian Spire, Elder Mavari received the battle reports in real time. She watched the numbers shift, Dominion losses mounting, human ships holding formation, the corridor littered with debris. She had expected this. What she had not expected was the speed of it. The humans were not just defending, they were demonstrating. She opened her personal log and typed a new entry. The Dominion has never lost a major engagement. They do not know how to process defeat. The humans are not fighting to win a battle. They are fighting to change the definition of victory. If the High Warlord continues, he will lose his entire fleet. If he retreats, he loses his reputation. Either way, the Empire's certainty is broken. She paused, then added, I should have spoken sooner. She closed the log and watched the replay of Admiral Ren's transmission. The woman's face was calm, her voice steady. She held a cup, a small chipped thing, nothing like the ornate vessels of the Dominion. It was ordinary. That Mavari realized was the point. The second hour of the engagement brought a brief lull. Both fleets regrouped. The Dominion had lost 47 ships, a small fraction, but enough to disrupt their formation. The humans had lost none. Ren ordered a pause to allow the evacuation flotilla to complete its load. Commander Webb approached her station. Admiral, we've received a message from New Jakarta. The last transport is loaded. They're asking for confirmation that the corridor is safe. Ren looked at the display. The Dominion fleet had pulled back to the corridor's mouth, regrouping. They had not retreated, but they were not advancing either. Send the confirmation. Tell them we will hold the corridor for another hour. Then we will reposition to cover their departure. Webb nodded. He hesitated. Admiral, there's something else. A private transmission addressed to you directly. No sender ID, but it's using Dominion encryption. Ren raised an eyebrow. Put it through. The message was short, a single line of text in Dominion standard translated to human script. The elder who closed her eyes during the vote sends her regards. The Empire is not monolithic. Some of us have been waiting too. Ren stared at the words. She did not know who sent it, but she understood. There were cracks in the Dominion's certainty, and cracks, she thought, were the beginning of fractures. But Kor Vethin had no intention of fracturing. He had spent 200 years building his legend. He had led 14 boarding actions. He had conquered 9 species. He would not be undone by a species that had been hiding in the dark. He ordered a full assault, all remaining 1,823 ships, a single coordinated push. He would overwhelm the humans with numbers. The fleet surged forward, the corridor filled with warships. On the Onyx Bridge, Ren saw it coming. She set down the cup and gave the order. All dreadnoughts, execute Pattern 7. Mines, Stage 2. Support vessels, hold position. The human fleet moved as one. The dreadnoughts shifted into a staggered formation, overlapping shields, presenting a wall of fire that no Dominion ship could penetrate. The mines detonated in a sequence that created a corridor of death. Any Dominion ship that attempted to cross would be shredded. and the support vessels, 12,000 of them, began to launch swarms of drones that targeted the Dominion's exposed engines. The battle was over in 47 minutes. Kor Vithan watched his fleet disintegrate. Not all of it, but enough. The remaining ships were trapped, their formations broken, their morale shattered. He had two choices: continue and lose everything, or retreat and lose everything else. He chose retreat. All ships, withdraw. Now? The order was broadcast. The Dominion fleet turned and fled. The humans did not pursue. They held the corridor, silent and intact. On the Onyx Bridge, Ren counted the losses. The Dominion had lost 214 ships. The humans had lost none. But she did not celebrate. She picked up the cup and walked to the viewing window. The stars were cold and distant. The evacuation flotilla was safe. The colonies were intact. And the galaxy had just learned that silence was not emptiness. She set the cup down on the ledge. The logo caught the light. The silent century, she murmured. 300 years, she looked at the tactical display. The Dominion fleet was gone, but they would come back. They always came back. But this time, they would not come with arrogance. They would come with fear, and fear, Ren knew, was a different kind of patience. She turned to her crew. "Patch me through to the fleet." The channel opened. She spoke 4 words. "Stand by." "We are not done." The Dominion fleet did not retreat far. They pulled back to the corridor's mouth, regrouped and waited. Kor Vithan had not surrendered. He had merely paused. On the Onyx Bridge, Admiral Ren watched the red icons reassemble. The human fleet held position, 87 dreadnoughts, silent, patient. But she knew patience was a finite resource. The evacuation flotilla was clear. The colonies were safe. Yet the Dominion's 1,800 ships were still out there, and they were still commanded by a man who had never lost. Commander Webb approached Admiral. Long-range sensors show additional contacts entering the system. They're not Dominion, at least. Not their standard configuration. Smaller ships. Fast. Any identification? Negative. They're not broadcasting. Ren set down the cup. "Keep our weapons hot. If they enter the corridor, we treat them as hostile." The contacts moved slowly, deliberately. They did not enter the corridor. They stopped at its edge, holding position. Then a transmission came in on a private channel. It was not Dominion encryption. It was older, alien in a different way. Ren opened the channel. A face appeared, ancient, scaled, with eyes that had seen centuries. "Elder Mavari, Admiral Ren," Mavari said, her voice soft, worn. "I am the one who sent you the message. The elder who closed her eyes during the vote. I am Valeth, and I am here to help." Ren studied the face. "You're with the Dominion Council?" "I was. I am no longer. The Council voted to annex your worlds." "I dissented. They did not listen." She paused. "I have watched your species for 30 years. I have watched your silence, your patience. I know what you built. I also know what you did not build." "What do you mean?" Mavari's eyes flickered, a moment of something that might have been regret. "The Dominion is not just warships. It is not just the fleet that withdrew. There is an older power hidden in the home system. The Korath found it 6,000 years ago, before they became the dominant power. A weapon. They do not use it. They have never needed to. But it is there." Ren felt cold. "What kind of weapon? A ship, not like yours, not like any I have seen. It is not built, it is found. It responds to the High Warlord's bloodline. If Kor Vithan activates it, your 87 dreadnoughts will not be enough. No fleet will be enough." The bridge was silent. Ren looked at the cup. The logo stared back at her. The silent century. 300 years of building, and it might still not be enough. "How do we stop him?" Mavari closed her eyes. "The weapon requires a key. The High Warlord carries it, a small object, worn around his neck. It is the only activation mechanism. If you can take it from him, the weapon cannot be used." Ren studied the ancient face. "You're asking us to board the flagship of a fleet that outnumbers us 20 to 1. I am asking you to consider what you are willing to lose," Mavari said. "Your fleet is impressive. Your patience is admirable. But the Dominion has been patient too, patient in a different way. They have been preserving their secret for 6 millennia. They will not hesitate to use it now that you have threatened their certainty." The transmission ended. Ren stared at the dark screen. On the glory of Karath, Kor Vithan stood in his private quarters. The battle had shaken him. More than he would admit, he had lost 214 ships. He had retreated. He had been ordered out of his own corridor. The words echoed in his mind. We were never defenseless. We were patient. He touched the pendant around his neck, a small black shard, cold to the touch. His father had given it to him, and his father before him, all the way back to the first High Warlord. It was not a symbol of power. It was power itself. The ancient ship, the one that had been discovered in the deep dark, responded only to this. He had never thought he would need it. But the humans had shown him something he had never seen, a species that refused to break. They had built, in silence, for 300 years. They had learned his every move. They had made him look foolish. He gripped the pendant. He would not look foolish again. Communications, he called. Prepare a message for the fleet. We are returning to the corridor. Full formation, and bring the ancient ship online. Its coordinates are in my personal databank. The officer on the other end hesitated. High Admiral, the ancient ship is not. I know what it is. Bring it online. In the high chamber of the Obsidian Spire, Elder Mavari watched the Dominion's fleet movements from a private terminal. She saw the orders being broadcast, the recall, the realignment. And she saw something else, a single power signature rising from the Dominion's homeworld, something that had not been active in 6,000 years. She had hoped she was wrong. She had hoped the humans would be enough. She sent a second transmission to Admiral Wren. This time the message was shorter. He has activated it. You have 72 hours before it reaches full readiness. After that, nothing in the galaxy can stop it. I'm sending you the coordinates of the ancient ship, and I'm sending you the access codes to the High Warlord's quarters. You will have one window. When the ship is at 40% readiness, its defensive systems will be at their weakest. That is your only chance. Wren received the message. She read it, then read it again. Commander Webb, get me Captain Vasquez and Lieutenant Park. I need a full tactical assessment of the Dominion home system. We're going in. The next 16 hours were a blur of planning. The human fleet repositioned, sending a small strike force toward the Dominion home system while the main body held the corridor. Wren led the mission personally. She would not ask her crew to do something she would not do herself. The strike force consisted of 12 dreadnoughts, heavily modified for speed and stealth. They would slip through the Dominion sensor net, reach the home system, and board the flagship. It was a suicide mission. Everyone knew it. Wren sat in her ready room, the chipped cup in her hands. The tea was cold. She drank it anyway. She thought about the museum, about the photographs of the first human ships. She thought about the people who had built them, ordinary people with ordinary lives, who had looked at the stars and decided to walk toward them. She thought about the generations that had followed, each one passing down the same lesson. Wait, build, do not show your hand. She set down the cup. The crack near the rim seemed deeper than it had before. Admiral, Park's voice came over the intercom. We're approaching the outer marker. The Dominion sensor net is dense. We have a window of approximately 4 minutes where we can slip through undetected. Wren stood. Take it. The strike force moved. The ships went dark. No emissions, no signals, no heat. They coasted through the gap like shadows. For 2 hours, they drifted, invisible. Then the alert came. A Dominion patrol had detected a micro-anomaly. Not enough to trigger a full alert, but enough to send a scout. Admiral, we have a scout vectoring toward our position, Park reported. Estimated arrival in 8 minutes. Wren looked at the display. The scout was small, fast. It could not destroy them, but it could report their position. Ready the boarding teams, she said. We're going in hot. The boarding of the Glory of Kareth was chaos. Wren led the team herself, 12 soldiers, all volunteers. They dropped from the Dreadnought's launch bay, cutting through the flagship's hull with plasma torches. The Dominion crew was caught off guard. They had never been boarded, never faced an enemy on their own ship. The corridors were tight, lined with scaled guards. Wren moved through them, her weapon up, her focus narrow. She had trained for this, not in a simulation, but in the quiet hours of waiting, when she had imagined every possibility. Clear left, Webb called. Moving to the next intersection, confirming High Warlord's quarters are 1 level above. Park's voice crackled through the comm. He's not moving. He knows you're coming. Wren reached the door. It was sealed, reinforced. She placed a charge and stepped back. The blast threw the door inward. Corvethan stood at the far end of the room, his ceremonial plate gleaming, his hand clutching the pendant. His face was calm, but his eyes were not. You came, he said. I expected you would. Wren raised her weapon. The pendant. Give it to me. Or what? You will shoot me? He laughed, a harsh sound. I am the High Warlord of the Korath Dominion. I have commanded fleets for 2 centuries. I will not be threatened by a species that had to hide in the dark to survive. We did not hide, Ren said. We waited. There's a difference. She stepped closer. The room was silent. The battle sounds from the corridors were muffled, distant. Vethan touched the pendant. Do you know what this is? It is older than my empire, older than your species. It is the key to a ship that can destroy worlds, and it is mine. He raised his other hand, and a panel on the wall opened, revealing a weapon rack. He did not reach for it. He simply looked at her. You came alone, he said. You are brave. But bravery is not enough. Ren shook her head. You still don't understand. We didn't build 87 dreadnoughts to fight your fleet. We built them to buy time. The real plan was always this. She held up a small device, a remote, connected to the Strike Force's flagship. 300 years ago, when we started Project Stillwater, we knew we couldn't outbuild you, so we built something else. A network, a system. Every dreadnought is a node, every mine is a relay. And everything we have learned about your fleet, every pattern, every weakness, has been fed into a single calculation. She pressed the button. The calculation is simple. Your fleet's shield harmonics, your formation patterns, your response times. We have been calibrating for 300 years. The moment you activated the ancient ship, your flagship's systems became transparent to us. We know exactly where to hit. On the display behind her, the glory of Korath's structural schematics appeared, with targeting markers flashing on every critical system. Your ship is dead, Ren said. It just doesn't know it yet. Kor Vethan stared at the display. His hand tightened on the pendant. For a moment he looked like he might refuse. Then his shoulders sagged. He pulled the pendant from his neck and tossed it to her. Take it. It means nothing now. Ren caught it. The shard was cold, heavy. She looked at it, then at him. You have 72 hours to get your ships out of human space, she said. After that, we will consider any remaining presence an act of war. She turned and walked out. On the Onyx Bridge hours later, Ren set the pendant on the table next to her cup. The strike force had extracted successfully. The Dominion fleet was withdrawing, slowly, grudgingly, but withdrawing. The ancient ship's activation had been halted. She looked at the cup. The logo caught the light. The silent century. She said to no one. It's over. But she knew it was not over. The Dominion had retreated, but they had not surrendered. They would come back, not in years, but in centuries. And when they did, the humans would be ready. She picked up the pendant. It hummed faintly, a vibration she could feel through her fingers. There was something else here, something the Dominion had not known, or had forgotten. The ancient ship was not just a weapon, it was a message, a warning, and it had been waiting for someone to read it. Ren set the pendant down. She would study it later. For now, she just wanted to rest. The tea had gone cold. She drank it anyway. The pendant hummed against her palm. Ren turned it over, studying the black shard's surface. It was smooth, almost warm now, as if it had recognized her touch. She set it beside the cup and stared at both objects, one ordinary, one ancient. They seemed to belong together. Admiral, Lieutenant Park's voice came through the comm. You need to see this. The pendant is emitting a signal. We've traced it to a source in the Kale corridor. Not the Dominion home system, something closer. Ren picked the pendant up again. Show me. The display flickered to life. A map of the corridor appeared with a single marker blinking near the brown dwarf's outer edge. The same gravity shadow where the fleet had been built. 300 years, Ren murmured. And we never knew it was there. She took a shuttle to the coordinates. The pendant guided her, its hum growing stronger as she approached. The brown dwarf loomed ahead, dark and massive. She had spent decades in its shadow, but she had never looked this closely at its outer edge. The shuttle's sensors registered an anomaly, a structure, embedded in the dwarf's outer atmosphere. It was small, ancient, and it had been there long before humanity had ever left Earth. Ren docked the shuttle and stepped through an airlock that opened without resistance. The interior was dark, cold, filled with dust that had not been disturbed in millennia. She walked forward, the pendant glowing faintly in her hand. At the center of the structure was a pedestal. On it rested a single object, a second shard, identical to the one she carried. And beside it, a message, carved into the stone in a language she did not recognize but somehow understood. To the one Pio finds this, you have waited. You have built. You have been patient. The ship you found is not a weapon. It is a key. And the door it opens leads to something older than empires. Ren read the words twice. Then she placed the pendant on the pedestal beside the matching shard. The room trembled. Light flooded the space, not harsh but warm. A holographic image appeared before her. A figure, ancient and alien, its features impossible to read. It spoke in a voice that was not a voice, but understanding came anyway. You have passed the test, not the test of strength, the test of patience. The Korath found this place 6,000 years ago, but they did not understand. They took the weapon and left the key. They never returned. You are the first to come back. Ren stepped forward. What is this place? A record, a warning, a museum. The figure's light flickered. The species that built this was the first to reach the stars. They were powerful, but they were not patient. They fought and conquered until there was nothing left to fight. In their final centuries, they built this, a message to whoever came next, a reminder that power without patience is destruction. The hologram shifted, showing images of wars, of burned worlds, of a civilization that had torn itself apart. They left the ship as a test. The Korath failed it. They saw only a weapon. You saw something else. You built. You waited. You did not strike first. That is why you're here. That is why you're worthy. Ren felt the weight of the words. Worthy of what? The figure turned to her. The truth. The galaxy is older than you know and more fragile. There are others like you, species that have learned to wait. The Velith are one of them. They have been watching the Dominion for millennia, waiting for someone to challenge them. You are the first, Elder Mavari, Ren said. Yes, she has been waiting for this moment longer than she has admitted. The pendant is not just a key to the ancient ship, it is a signal. When you placed it beside its counterpart, you sent a message across the galaxy. Every species that has been watching, every civilization that has been waiting, they now know that the time for silence is over. Ren looked at the pendant, now fused with the pedestal. What happens now? That depends on you. You have proven that patience is not weakness. Now you must prove that strength is not cruelty. The Dominion has retreated, but they have not learned. They will return. When they do, you will have allies, the Velith, the others who have been waiting. But you must lead them, not as conquerors, but as shepherds. The figure began to fade. The museum is now yours. Study what is here. Learn what the first species learned too late. And remember, silence is not emptiness. It is the loudest form of waiting. The hologram vanished. Ren stood alone in the dark, the pendant's glow fading. She picked up the second shard, the counterpart, and slipped it into her pocket. She had found the answer. On the onyx bridge, hours later, Ren sat in her ready room. The cup was in front of her, the tea cold, as always. She had not touched it. She was still processing what she had seen. Commander Webb entered. Admiral, we've detected a large fleet approaching from the Velith system. They're not hostile, they're transmitting a greeting. Elder Mavari is on the line. Ren nodded. Put her through. Mavari's face appeared, her ancient eyes bright. You found it, she said. I knew you would. The museum, Ren said. The first species, you knew about it. I suspected. The Dominion took the ship but left the key. They never understood what they had found. I have been waiting for someone who would, she paused. You have done more than defeat an empire, Admiral. You have opened a door. The Velith have been waiting for 6,000 years for a species that could be trusted. You are that species. Ren looked at the cup. What do you want from us? Not conquest, not alliance, just understanding. The galaxy is full of species that have learned to be patient. We have all been waiting for the Korath to fall, not by force, but by their own blindness. You have shown them that certainty is not strength. Now we can begin to build something new. Ren thought about the museum, the holographic figure, the warning, we don't want to be conquerors, then don't be. Be what you have always been, patient. The Dominion will return, but this time they will not come alone, and neither will you. The transmission ended. Ren sat in silence. She picked up the cup. The tea had gone cold. She drank it anyway. The logo caught the light. The silent century. 300 years of waiting, and it had only been the beginning. She did not celebrate. She did not give a speech. She simply called a meeting of her senior staff and told them what she had found. They listened, asked questions, and then returned to their stations. There was work to do. The Dominion fleet had withdrawn to its home system, but they had not surrendered. The ancient ship was still there, dormant but not destroyed. The Valith were moving, their fleet repositioning to support the human colonies. And somewhere in the dark, other species were stirring, the ones who had been waiting, watching, hoping. Ren looked at the map. The galaxy was no longer a place of certainties. It was a place of possibilities. She set the cup down. It sat beside the second shard, the counterpart to the pendant. Two objects, one ancient, one ordinary. They had both been waiting for the same thing. She left them there and walked to the viewing window. The stars were cold and distant, but they were not empty. She thought about the holographic figure's final words. Silence is not emptiness. It is the loudest form of waiting. She had known that for 300 years, now the galaxy knew it too. She stood there watching the stars until the first light of dawn touched the observation deck.